Hey friends, in this video I am going to show you what I accomplished in 2021 for one little word. This is the album I put together. This is a 6x8 album. It is a pink linen album that I picked up from Studio Calico a while ago and I just pulled it out of my stash. My word for 2021 was happy. So I just simply stamped that here and I didn't do anything else to the cover. And you can see that this album is pretty thick. Along with my putting together my album, I like to read a couple of nonfiction books that relate to my word. And last year I read The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin and Habits of a Happy Brain by Loretta Graziano Browning. I would recommend both of these books. I'm not really going to talk about them much, but just know that I did read these along with working through this project and the One Little Word classroom. So I try to follow the prompts from the classroom pretty closely, but I also will add in other things or do my own thing in this album as I feel like it speaks to me or it's fitting for me. Sometimes I am pretty strong throughout the whole year. Other times I kind of taper off. This year I definitely tapered off in this project, and you'll see that in my album. A lot of my projects, I will go back and complete them. Doesn't matter how long it takes me, I want to complete the album. One Little Word, I am different with that. With One Little Word, I tend to feel like the project is the process. So once the year is over, I'm gonna wrap it up and put it away and be done with it. And on to 2022. To start out my album, I just created this little insert here to hold my word. And I don't remember where these products were from. I think these were from Me and My Big Ideas from Michael's. And I just added a little tab here to stamp out the year and started the album with a photo of me. One of the things I like to do in my One Little Word album is include photos of myself throughout the year. I don't think I was as successful with that as I would have liked, but it is what it is. I also typed up an introduction and kind of how I came to my word and reflecting on my previous words. This was 2021 and I did One Little Word for the first time in 2015. So that makes this like the 6th year that I had done One Little Word. So I kind of had a general process and reflection and stuff that I wanted to do. And I just journaled about that. And you can see I did this December 2020. So I was ready to move on to this project in mid-December. For 2020, my One Little Word, I finished very strong in that project. 2021 was very different. To create my dividers, instead of getting the ones from Allie, I used these calendar inserts that were from the Get to Work book. I am not using the Get to Work book again in 2022, so I will not have those this year, but I'm going to do a totally separate approach, or different approach to this project. But I have used these for a few years in this, in One Little Word. Every month had a focus in this Happiness Project book. Unlike the other nonfiction book or other books, this book has a chapter for every month of the year. And I read that chapter when planning my goals for that month and kind of followed along with that book. I did adjust as necessary to fit my life, but I tended to follow it pretty closely. For this here, I just made a layout using the Action Story Kit on the back of my dividers. My plan was to decorate the back of my dividers every month with some different, whatever I felt like doing. I had done that in 2020 as well. You'll see as the album goes on that I didn't really stick with that as well as I would have liked. I used the digital version of the main kit that comes with the class to print out these cards and do the prompt for January. My word, like I said, was happy, and I just filled in all of these details here. I also got the mini kits, the quarterly mini kits for 2021. I also had gotten those in 2020 and I really liked them a lot. So I used a lot of those supplies throughout this project. And I did a lot of journaling here. And then the other thing that I did every month was I included these reflection pages. These are in the One Little Word journal. I had the digital version of the journal, so I pulled these pages from the digital version of the journal and printed them as their own 6x8 pages. And I tried to erase the page number on most of them. I missed it on this one. And I did some reflections at the end of the month. And that was one of my goals for this project, to end each month like that. And then I just needed a little filler here, so I included that. As you'll see, as the album goes on, I kind of eliminated filler in trying to just finish this project. February, the prompt was a vision board. For this year, I decided to go small enough to keep it in my album. That's something I had also done in 2020 and I really liked. I believe I had done that in some previous years as well. So I made 4 pages. So I had the back of my divider, this outside the page protector insert, and then this inside the page protector insert to back with my reflection here. And I love the vision board. It's just such a relaxing activity to me. So it's one that I really embrace every year and look forward to. March, the focus from the Happiness Project was work, which was actually very fitting for my life because March, work took over my life. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of this project for me, as you'll see. So in March, I had very high ambitions. It was the month to do a practice. And so I came up with 2. One was to do morning yoga, and I journaled that I wasn't planning on doing it every day, but I wanted to try to do it more days than not. You can see here I did not accomplish that goal, but I did do more than I would have done without this project, so I was happy with that. The second one that I did, which was me just being overly ambitious, was to do a photo of something that made me happy every day. And that one I struggled with. Just mostly because of how busy the month was and how stressed I was. But I did capture all these photos, and looking back through them, definitely I see a lot of moments of happiness in this month. I also, you can see here, was reading through The Habits of a Happy Brain during this month and taking notes on that and reflecting on it a lot. I did plan to read another nonfiction book later in the year, but I never got to it because 2021 was a tough year. I reflected on this project and typed this up and did my monthly reflection and kind of wrapped up March pretty solid for this project, surprisingly, given how stressful and busy of a month it was. I was working, 12-hour days. I was working on the weekends. It was a rough month. April, I was still feeling the vision board. I had some leftover pieces, and I just kind of did this for the back of my divider. The April prompt was about letting stuff go, and I really loved this prompt. I did it a little later in the month. Or maybe I even did it in a later month, but I really enjoyed it. And I created these cards where I typed up the different things I wanted to let go. I used this letting go. I believe that was digital that I put on there, and then I stamped out what I was letting go of. And these were from one of the mini kits, to document all of these things, and then they just slide in here. And this the background here is jelly printed that I just created this pocket with stitching some vellum on here, and this was another card that was in the One Little Word mini kits. On the back, I stamped out this quote from the song from Frozen, Let It Go, because the prompt was about letting go, and it just made me think of that song. Here's a photo of me from the month of April, and I just kind of embellished it with some of my One Little Word embellishments. One of my problems I found is that I love the products for One Little Word, and I buy a lot of them, but I don't use them. And then they're not products that translate very well to my other projects because they're very reflective and personal, and my other projects are more about what we did. So I end up piling up a lot of One Little Word products. So for this year, I'm not purchasing any additional products because I just have so many left over. Here's my reflection, but I do actually love having such a stash to kind of pull from and do things like this page where I just throw product on there and just have a little fun. May, the prompt was about play. The book, my Happiness Project book, was about play. And then the prompt was the photography prompt. I love the photography prompt typically, and I loved the way that Azari set this prompt up, but For whatever reason, this was just where I completely fell off the project and I didn't do it. I finally came back and did this at the end of the year. I pulled, these photos were photos from May, and I picked them out, and Zari's prompt was about finding emotion in photos. So I picked 4 photos and picked a word for each photo and then journaled about it. The journaling I actually did at the end of the year, and I used the Canva app on my iPad to do that. I was not really a huge fan of it, but you know, it got the prompts done, which was the goal. I did work on trying to do these reflections throughout the year, even when I didn't do the prompts, and I was pretty good about doing most of them. Maybe not right on time, but I didn't do them at the end of the year, which was great. June, the happiness project was on friends. And then I did do this prompt in June. I'm usually pretty good about doing the reflection prompts, doing the January, June, and December, even if I miss some of the other ones, because they're really just quick. They can be so quick and easy just to do this reflection. And looking back on this now, I feel like the first half of 2021 was much better than the second half for me. Something else that really stands out to me is my word for 2022 is enough. And I see the word enough popping up in this reflective journaling, even though I didn't realize at this time that that was going to be my word for 2022. I just filled the rest of this in here with more product. I did my reflection, and then moving on to July. July, the happiness project focuses on money. And then the prompt was from Pam Garrison to do it was like a mixed media thing. I did do this in the month. I had a lot of fun with it, and I just stuck it in here, and I was very happy with how that worked out. And then I did my reflections. And I kind of felt like in July I was going to get back on track with this. August, I did the prompt early. This was like stories I'm telling myself right now. So how I did this prompt was I used this note to self pad, which was a one little word product, but I don't even remember where it from. And I put like the story I'm telling myself that was a negative and crossed it out and wrote the positive that I wanted to tell myself instead. So my job is too hard. Instead, I wanted to tell myself hard is not the same as bad. I'm up for the challenge. And I journaled about all of those in here. I didn't get to do this. You can see this is where I started to really fall off. I had a filler page here, so I just stuck a photo from the month, and then I did my reflections. September was about focusing on a hobby in the happiness project, so I did crafts and scrapbooking, and then I just did not do the prompt. I don't even remember what the prompt was supposed to be. Instead, I ended up printing out a photo grid of photos of myself from the month of September. And I had originally planned to like back that with some journaling, and I think it was related to the prompt. I don't even remember what the prompt was, but instead I ended up just backing it with my reflections rather than putting that in a separate page protector, just to finish the month at the end of the year. This was when I was done and really just going through and wanting to wrap this album up. October's focus was supposed to be on health. October was also the month of my birthday, and I didn't do the prompt at all. I don't even remember what the prompt was. I did do my reflections, and then you can see it's just blank. November, I didn't do anything. I can't even find the calendar for this. I don't know what happened to it. And I printed out the reflection sheet. I didn't do it. I don't even know what the prompt was for November. I think that was the only one. I didn't even watch the video, which is so not like me. But you know, this year really was a lot. December, I didn't do my stamping here, but I did get the calendar in here. I didn't do this, but I did do my reflections. So I did the facts and feelings, and then that was it. I didn't do any more. Instead, I just did the monthly reflection, and you can see here, I didn't even set my goals for December. The month was rough. But I, wrote out, some positives, and I reflected on the year, and I feel like although I didn't finish all of the prompts, I learned a lot in this year. My word happy was a great word. It definitely helped me a lot in this year and helped bring me into 2022 and my journey that I'm starting now with the word enough. For 2022, I'm planning on doing this project primarily digitally and working in putting together a photo book, but I have not yet started that. It is now January 9th, 2022. So I still have a little bit of time to kind of figure out what I'm doing with it. And I just wanted to wrap this one up and get it on the shelf. So thanks for watching.